Welcome everyone to Improving Scottish Football. My name is Kieran and today we have got a one-off special episode. I was going to be taking a break from Improving Scottish Football, but you know, it's hard to ignore what has just happened, obviously. So we're going to discuss the Euros, what went wrong for Scotland, and we're also going to explore the bigger picture and some of the wider issues at play. And I'm hoping this is going to be fairly therapeutic. I think I'm seriously in need of some therapy to help me get over this, even though it's been quite a few days since the match. Here with me is John Walker, football analyst and coach, and of course host of the Scots Abroad podcast. So, John, how are you? How are you feeling now that a few days have passed?
Mate, worse. If you're talking about therapeutic, if I'm finding out that something's happened disastrous and you're talking about times past, this is your partner leaving you, finding out she won the lottery on Monday, finding out she met a new guy on Tuesday, and finding out they're now having a kid on Wednesday. That seems to be what I've felt like watching team after team who are on a similar level to us or potentially less than us, minus maybe a superstar player, starting to qualify for the last 16. So I don't feel better. I think maybe the jealous side of me has actually started to feel a little bit worse with the types of teams that I've seen qualifying, that I actually don't even think I'm biased towards Scotland when I say I think we've probably got a better overall squad. But they happen to have their superstars in the key areas of the pitch that we unfortunately don't.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to agree with you. I think I felt worse over the course of the week. I think I felt angrier as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was angry on Sunday night because it's obviously, you know, the worst sucker punch that you can have, you know, losing in the 99th minute. But as obviously a lot of people have pointed out on Twitter, and we'll obviously get into, we didn't deserve to go through with the stuff that we played. But yeah, I mean, I've just got angrier, more frustrated at what we showed, because it was embarrassing. We went out with a whimper. We didn't put up a fight, and we've kind of cemented how other people see us as well, which is really frustrating because you know, you were on the first ever episode we did of Improving Scottish Football, and we were talking about, are we still a long ball nation, right? And Nagelsmann said before the first game, oh, Scotland used to play long ball, but now they can play good football. Nope. We went out to Germany and we played defensive football, we played long ball football, conservative football, and it was really not enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I think Nagelsmann's probably dipped in a bit of the water of the Rodri there and not wanted to say anything stupid, because I do know there was other comments in the German media where they were insinuating that we were an uncomfortable team, a, a poor team, a hard team to play against because of how little football we were going to attempt to play. So I think that was maybe more sound bites than him being respectful. Maybe Steve Clark was waiting to answer a question after him in the same media room. I don't know.
Okay.
But that felt a little bit like, don't say anything stupid, be respectful, more than actually calling out what it was, because Germany didn't look like a team that were set up to deal with anything Scotland were potentially going to throw at them. Germany were
Mm.
set up to dominate that game and make us look exactly like they did, and we just played into it from the
Yeah.
word go.
Yeah. And we had such an opportunity. I think that was probably the biggest disappointment. That game in particular was the disappointment for me because we had the eyes of the world, you know, on us. 10 million viewers tuned in for that on, you know, in the UK alone. We had such an opportunity, and to, yes, obviously you get a man sent off, and obviously it's Germany, you know, there's obviously lots of challenges, but the fact we just didn't put up any sort of a fight in that opening game was that was the worst match for me.
Yeah, yeah, and the fact that Germany had played two disappointing friendlies, I know we had as well, but there's nobody telling me that you couldn't have viewed the Germany game as a free hit as such, and potentially went out and try to put them under a lot of pressure instead of sitting in and just waiting for the inevitable. I honestly couldn't believe what I was watching, but annoyingly I could. It was it's something I've been warning people of, despite all of our amazing form that we were going through with results under Scotland and under Steve Clark. I kept my mouth shut because it sounded stupid. If you were being negative about Steve Clarke, it seemed like you
Hmm.
had some sort of agenda against him. If you were saying, I don't know, I still don't like the way we play football. I still think we've got better players there, like a better coach. I'll keep using that because everyone speaks so highly of Steve Clarke. He must be a great man manager because nobody seems to say a bad word about him. But a better coach could do more with this team and do more with this talent pool of players. I said we've got a plethora of talented players. I believe that. I believe we've got weaknesses in certain areas, but we've got Serie A's midfielder of the year can't get in our team. That to me is a plethora of talent if you have that issue. We're having to choose between Shea Adams, who I've watched pretty much week in, week out in the championship. He's a top level English championship striker, top level. If you get players around him and link up with him, Lyndon Dykes is a very good international striker for what he does. So to me, we've got two as good of two strikers as those other teams that I'm talking about in the bracket that I consider us on par with.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I would like a better striker, but you're right in terms of like the quality. And if I look back over like, the 20, 25 years, 30 years I've been watching Scotland, since we last qualified for, well, let's say France 1998, since then, I think, the quality of teams that we've got players playing for, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Bologna, etc., Aston Villa, this is a higher caliber of team than we have had, for a long time. And I really don't mind losing. In the Euros, I don't mind. I wouldn't have minded if we'd lost all three games if we had gone for it and if we'd played some good stuff. I would be sitting here going, yeah, it's frustrating, but we were never going to win the Euros anyway, and at least we showed some fight. We showed what Scotland was about. But instead, honestly, I want to kind of wipe the Euros from my memory, pretend it didn't happen. And I feel so sorry for all the guys and girls who have gone out there and spent thousands of pounds on the travel and having to sit through those matches in person. What went wrong, John? Tell me. What's behind all this?
So this is where I'm going to sound like a proper negative Norman. Is that what you called them? Negative Normans? Um,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
when I go through this. Now, there was a point in time during that qualifying campaign where we were flying. Confidence was sky high. The key players in our team were flying at their club teams. We had a settled 11. We got good circumstantial games at the right time. We got a Spanish team who had just won the Nations League, having gone to extra time twice, sent 17 players home, changed their squad. Only three of the players that appeared that day have played any minutes at the Euros or are even at the Euros for that Spanish squad. So when I sound negative and say we beat a second string Spain team on the right night at Hampden with the right crowd, with the right attitude, that's the reality. We did. We keep referring to that game as the big one. We caught Spain at the perfect time. Norway away, we were never in the game until we subbed off Ryan Porteous and brought on Kenny McLean and went to 4-2-3-1. And they took off Haaland. Circumstantial, one of the biggest robberies I've ever seen, but amazing nonetheless.
It was good. It was good.
But an
But
absolute.
yeah, but the game was terrible. The game was terrible.
So there were all these warning signs. Cyprus at home, which we won 3-0 late on with two McTominay goals. One of the worst games of football I've ever sat through. Cyprus away, we were really good. Georgia at home was a lottery with that pitch, to be honest. But again, done the job. But there were still loads of signs there where I was like, we are pretty negative. Like that this is having really top players, in my opinion, in McGinn, McTominay, Billy Gilmore, Callum McGregor, Ryan Christie, Linda Dyke, Shea Adams, Kieran Tierney, Andy Robertson, and Aaron Hickey. Aaron Hickey's injury changes the whole thing because that whole right side then becomes who do you throw in and you're protecting him with Ryan Porteous or Jack Henry in a formation that I don't think suits either of those players. So all these things are building up, and you're watching games going, we need to try different things in these upcoming friendlies or these upcoming dead rubbers. And we didn't. We played the same formation, we played the same players, we sometimes played bizarre players in bizarre positions. All of this is leading to a situation whereby if Aaron Hickey does not like miraculously recover from his hamstring injury, I don't know what we're going to do about the Euros because we're going to be so lopsided, and teams already know it's Tierney and Robertson's not a secret weapon. Everyone knows that's our side.
Hmm.
Similar to England playing out with Trippier. You've seen Slovenia totally lopside their team and only press on Kyle Walker's side, so it went to Trippier because they know he's going to have to move on to his right foot. This is elite level football. You cannot have a left side that's so dominant when teams like Switzerland are just going to press you and force you over to the other side and let Anthony Ralston and Jack Hendry have the ball between themselves. Teams are going to do that. It's not rocket science. It's pretty simple to solve. And then you don't even combat that with trying out wingers, with trying out wide players that are maybe in form. Just not enough. And then you hit a Euros where you've won one game in 12. Well, you end a Euros winning one game in 12, and that game being Gibraltar. It's just it just feels all off, and it feels like a manager that doesn't have an understanding as to what it is to move forward with the ball. Steve Clarke, the stuff that I'm hearing Scotland fans say was the same stuff that West Brom fans were saying when Steve Clarke was there. Same stuff, exact same stuff. Too organised, too defensive, too negative, doesn't want to go for it. When he does, it's too late. Like, these are all things 11 years ago as a club manager, which backs up everything that I've felt about him, and that his in-game managerial ability is almost nil. It's that poor, and he's surrounded himself with a coaching staff that I believe is equally inadequate for the role they've got. Because the drop-off, I think it was Owen James that put it up on Twitter. I don't know what Stephen Naismith's involvement was and how much coaching he did, but the drop-off since he's went to Hearts has been astonishing as a team. That could all just be coincidental, but the drop-off has been unbelievable. And I do question what's going on. There's no way that if you could ask Andy Robertson, John McGinn, Callum McGregor in a serious conversation, what is the level of coaching at Scotland compared to what you're getting at your club team? How far off is it? Steve Clarke was Kilmarnock manager. That was his level. All these players are superior levels at elite level playing in Europe. They're getting better coaching and they're turning up to international football. And just, to me, must be getting coached at a standard that just isn't it. See, when I even listen to Callum McGregor's interviews for Scotland, it's like a different human being. He's talking about hard work, getting close to opponents. But when he's talking about Celtic games, it's about pressing triggers, opening teams up, the patterns of play they worked on. You can sense it. You can go, this is somebody that's listening to a person that's just about amateur football pish. Oh, get close to people, get your tackles in, work hard. Pure generic stuff that we talked about in that first episode. It's so grim. And I can hear Andy Robertson and Callum McGregor saying these words, and I go, I listened to Kvartsvela, sorry, I'm going to butcher that name, but I listened to him talking about the things that Willie Sagnol had talked about pressing Paulinho central in a 5-3-2 instead of dropping in to protect the right back in a 5-4-1. He was talking about that in his press conference. Details that elite coaches add in game, little tweaks that get your team to the last 16 of the Euros that we are incapable or don't have, because there's a lot of things that people laugh about with punters and fans and go, you've never been in the game, you've never done this, you don't know what it's like to manage, you don't know the pressure. See, when I looked on Twitter at halftime of the Scotland-Hungary game, every single Scotland fan was saying the same things. And the guy who's in charge of the team doesn't appear to see it, or just doesn't want to admit that it's not working, because he's so risk averse that he doesn't want to change anything. And that's my problem. He either doesn't see it or he's too stubborn. And one of those things is not good enough to be the Scotland manager anymore.
Yeah. And it's not just Scotland fans saying that. I mean, it was pretty universal. I listened to the Guardian Football Weekly. They were literally laughing at how embarrassing our football was. Like, they were literally laughing on the pod at how terrible, and I quote, how terrible Scotland have been in this competition. And yeah, well, I'm just going to pick up on one thing you said there about Clarke's previous jobs. So they referenced one of the pundits on it, I can't remember who it was, played for QPR against Reading, and it was like the final day of the Premier League campaign, and one of them needed a win to stay up, and it finished 0-0. And also, I've got a good mate who's a fan of Liverpool, and of course, Steve Clarke was Liverpool's defensive coach, and he was saying, like, our defensive record when Clarke was there was amazing, but that was about it.
The amazing thing, by the way, I've no doubt about that, because what we've done with the players available, because I'm not sitting here pretending that we've ever had a back five that's elite. What Steve Clarke does with the defensive side, if it is him that does it, is pretty phenomenal outside of this tournament. We are pretty solid. We're pretty comfortable defending our box. We're pretty comfortable plugging gaps. It's only when we get to those teams, England, Netherlands, France, Germany, that I feel have really opened us up and made us look foolish. So everything under that, the defensive side, I'm not worried about. Without the ball, I'm not worried about. However, I feel like that's a thing I could probably put forward to every single Scotland manager that we've ever had, based on the level of player that's been available, as we've always been quite organised. It's when the players' level of quality has dropped, we've dropped. And when the players' level's been higher, i.e. Craig Brown, we've went higher. Or when Alex McLeish's had a fit Davy Weir, Gary Caldwell, Alan Hutton, we did well. Same under Walter Smith. We had better players playing at a good level, playing consistently, and we were doing better and looked better organised. And this is something that you and I have touched on before many a time, is I have no issue with how Scottish footballers run out of possession. I think we know how to shape in, how to suffer, how to deal with cross into the box, how to get out and shut down shots. I think we're all good at that. It's when we do meet elite, or when a team like Hungary watches us, and this was the point I was going to make, was I was on the BBC podcast with Ben, a Hungarian football expert, and he openly said, this was the day before the game, he said, what we're hearing from the Hungary training camp is that they're going to just let Scotland have the ball for the opening hour and then try and hit them on the counter late on. Like, that's embarrassing. There's Hungarian reporters that are willing to step out and go, our team believe you guys are incapable of doing anything with this football, in the way that if we let you have it and don't try and press and don't make gaps, you'll like be a punch drunk boxer. You'll punch yourself tired, and then I'll knock you out late on when I have to, because I'm a superior technical boxer that knows how to counter and break people down. And that was exactly what happened. When we were having to go for the game, Hungary looked more dangerous. And that's what we were hoping for. I think Steve Clarke just thought, because Hungary had Soboslai, because Switzerland had Granit Xhaka and Brelin Bo, that these teams would come at us and attack us, and we would be able to do what we did against Norway, what we did against Spain at home, sit in, hit them on the counter with Tierney Robertson, find big gaps, McTominay begin breaking out the box with loads of space, and we would do that. All these teams are adaptable. We're not. These teams will find a way to adjust and beat us. We are just rinsing and repeating the same thing that for 9 games prior wasn't working. We knew it wasn't working. We knew it's broken, and we keep doing it. Tierney injured for the last game, and we're still playing that back five that was only brought in to accommodate Robertson and Tierney. It is insanity that we're still using this system.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Scott McKenna, by the way, Scott McKenna, Grant Hanley, and Jack Henry were absolutely fine against Hungary.
I thought they did well.
No issue with Scott McKenna, but the system's designed for underlapping left centre halves, which Scott McKenna's not. Scott McKenna's a centre half, and we still play it. And you've got Andy Robertson, whose average position is beneath the midfielders, but that's meant to be the guy you're getting all your width from. Same on Anthony Ralston's side. So where are we ever getting the goals from? Where are we ever going to create these chances? And it just that's a real concern to me, is that this is what we're continually happening, and that's what hurts me a little bit. Is you do see people on Twitter like openly saying to you, I can't believe how bad you guys were, like, because they hadn't watched us in qualifying. They'd seen the Spain highlights, they'd seen the Norway highlights. See, if you watch us, you know that those kind of things can happen, because we're not a good side. We're not pretty in the eye. We don't create a lot of chances. We probably perform exactly to our XG, stuff like that. We're very good at set plays previously to this tournament, to be fair. So all those things, you just get one part of that wrong and you get embarrassed at a tournament and you end up bottom of all these statistics, unfortunately.
Yeah, worst team at the tournament. And to be fair, this Euros we've outperformed our XG, right? Because our XG was 0.9 and we scored 2 goals, one own goal and one massively deflected goal. So get it up your XG.
And the fewest shots from anyone attempted at the Euros as well.
Oh God, yeah, grim. Well, do you want to throw some other? Have you got any other stats that you want to throw out, John?
What did we miss there? Second fewest big chances missed, but that just kind of backs up the fact we didn't have any big chances. 22nd on tackles, which means we're the third lowest team to be putting in tackles. And I know I'm going to actually go against what I've previously said, and I'm going to sound pretty amateurish, but see when things aren't going your way, I don't mind if people start putting the boot in a combative way, getting in people's faces and getting tackles in and try to turn over the ball.
Yeah, not in
When
a not in a Porteous way.
Not in a
We should
Porteous way.
clarify.
21st on interceptions, which means we're never on the front foot to try and anticipate a pass. We were second lowest on pressing. We had no presses in the final third that turned over. All these things just paint the picture as to what we all see. We're a team that drop off, we're a team that sit in, we're a team that don't try and win the ball in the front foot. We wait till it goes out of play and turns over to us, or we wait till they give us to our goalkeeper and we play for there, or we wait till they make a slack pass into our defensive third and then we break from there.
What is behind those decisions? To go with this system and to not make tactical adjustments in games if something isn't working, and to be so late on substitutions and things like that. Is it because he believes in this philosophy? Is it because he's unable to play another way? Is he too proud to change? Is he too loyal?
I think it's a lot of the same things, little bits of all of that. So I don't think he knows another way to play with this Scotland side. He's tried the 4-3-3. It was pretty much a disaster when he played it at the start, but I think we've now got a better squad and a more confident squad. But he did try it at the start, and that's why he reverted to this back five, because we were taking poundings off Russia, poundings off Belgium, poundings off Portugal. It was pretty grim. So he did fix that. Back five, get Tierney in there. We can hopefully solidify. We started getting results. We started keeping clean sheets. We started winning games. We started getting close to qualifying for tournaments. We started going through the Nations League. Everything was working. I think he got the right structure in place. I think he got the right backbone. But you need to then evolve from that. And that's the bit we've stuck on. We've been doing the same thing repeatedly, and teams now know that it's Tierney Robertson, Scotland go down the left side, or if Tierney's out, they're still going to play the back five. We can get at them. That's it. But as simple as that. As for the squads, the loyalty thing, I understand the club ethos, and I know this has been a big thing that Gareth Southgate's put forward as well. Having a club-like mentality at the club, same faces, same people, same coaching staff. Everyone's familiar, everyone's comfortable. There's no bedding in period when people turn up. Everyone knows how it works, so there's less issues to deal with. Every time you introduce a new face, there's potential that that guy's face doesn't fit, and I think that's probably what happened with Elliot Anderson and why he probably left. So there's all these different dynamics as to why he probably doesn't change things. But if you're telling me that Ryan Jack was selected and Ryan Jack was never fit enough to play any part, that was just loyalty because he missed the last tournament. With all due respect, fuck that. This isn't a lottery, this isn't a charity. It's a major tournament that we could have got to the last 16 of, and you're dishing out plane tickets based on sentimentality. No good enough. Ryan Jack's played a handful against the Rangers this year and been injured the rest. Didn't he deserve a place on that plane or in that Scotland squad? And somebody who actually might have a serious future in the Scotland national side could have took that ticket and could have been part of a squad and could have got minutes. Not using subs, so you're draining the players who already look tired. Like, I'll not really give. I know people think this is. I do this a lot, but I'm not. Anthony Ralston didn't choose to be selected. Anthony Ralston's not going to turn down going to Euros. Anthony Ralston did the best that Anthony Ralston could do at that Euros. Ryan Porteous made an error in judgment. He's playing for Scotland. He's never going to turn that down. Ryan Jack's not going to turn it down because he wants to go to a Euros. I see a lot of abuse of John McGinn for not performing. John McGinn has played every single game bar one for Aston Villa this year. John McGinn looked like a player. And bear in mind, you're getting, 9-10 minutes added time in English Premier League. So for every 9 games, you're playing another game. So that's another, 4 or 5 games in your season. Same issue in Europe. A couple of games went to extra time. John McGinn has been absolutely rattled, and he's plays all the minutes for Scotland in the build-ups, all the friendlies. John McGinn is playing every single minute at the highest level of football. John McGinn looked like a player that was absolutely dead in his feet and had nothing to offer that national side. Like, nothing. I've never seen John McGinn like that, ever. He looked completely dead in his feet. So not making subs is just compounding that error, making it worse. You've got less minutes. Again, shared around. The loyalty, yeah, I think it's that. not enough experimenting in the build-up. I could go on about that all day long. I think I've already written about it a couple of times. The having Christie and Ferguson available for certain squads. I know Ferguson was then injured for the Euros, but at the time when we had both of them available, you had Ryan Christie playing a 6 for Bournemouth, Lewis Ferguson playing a kind of 8-10 for Bologna. But when they come to Scotland, they're playing the other way around. And to me, it is kind of going, not being disrespectful, but whose opinion do I trust more? Thiago Motta, who's now went to Juventus, or Steve Clarke, who could potentially be unemployed after being the worst team at European Championships? Areola was nominated for English Premier League Manager of the Year. Whose opinion do I trust more? Probably going to go with Areola again. So what did they see in this 6 and 8 switch between those two players that Steve Clarke keeps bringing Lewis Ferguson on as a sitting midfielder for Scotland when he doesn't play that role? And to be honest, Lewis Ferguson has never played that role for Aberdeen either. He was always a 10 off the striker or a false 9. He played high up the park and got goals. So to me, it's just baffling that that's the same issue we keep having. I know I made the Callum McGregor moan about Christie, but that was all about context. I feel like Callum McGregor has a very specific set of skill for Celtic that is not contextually the same as what he should be doing for Scotland. Callum McGregor has never played a game in his life outside of European football or outside of Scotland where he's not had the ball for 70% of the time. He dominates that ball, he presses on teams, and he transfers in recovery. That's what Callum McGregor's good at. Callum McGregor doesn't get to do that for Scotland. He just doesn't. He suffers chasing people around in the Scotland game. And you've seen him for a couple of goals. He looked completely lost because he's not somebody that has to worry about picking up a 10 behind his shoulder because teams in Scotland don't play through lines. They play over the top of you. All those things where I was then going, it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but the context was there of going, Ryan Christie kind of suffers a lot in the Premier League. He has to play that role for Bournemouth, starved of the ball, and then is expected to make things happen when he's not seen it for a long time. And I was just like, him and Billy Gilmore seem like the natural two for what we need in this time, unless Scotland switch to a 4-3-3 where they dominate the ball, and then Callum McGregor can do exactly what Callum McGregor does week in, week out, which is dominate a midfield and dominate players with the ball. But if you're not a team that's doing that, I don't think you get the Callum McGregor that plays for Celtic. Much in the same way, and this isn't a Rangers Celtic thing, so I'll back myself here by saying much in the same way that Barry Ferguson was almost always terrible for Scotland. It wasn't the same thing. It was a different thing that he wasn't good at. Barry Ferguson was not a defensive midfielder. Barry Ferguson did not get about the pitch and put tackles in. He did not win the ball in the air. Barry Ferguson was a footballer that used to dominate the ball. And you put him in a squad that doesn't do that, he's going to look worse. Same with Darren Fletcher. We can go through all these players that had the same issue in Scotland squads. And I just think Callum McGregor's one of the ones that have fallen foul to that, which is why I would maybe like a midfielder, more mid-table Premier League, but play good styles of football.
Mm. Okay, that's all very interesting. The loyalty thing is something I think we've all borne witness to. You know, just sticking with the same old, same player. I mean, the squad pretty much that went into the Euros this year was, I mean, by and large, the same kind of squad that went into the Euros 3 years ago. And I thought that we would have learned our lessons more from the last Euros. The problem is, this is like almost like a second strike on Steve Clarke. You know, he 100% deserves plaudits for getting us to the Euros. I mean, goodness knows we've both suffered for decades on us not qualifying for major tournaments, and it's brilliant that we're there. And thank you so much, Steve, and all the staff. Absolutely love it. But we've shat the bed in both of them, and we've made the same mistakes in both of them. Like, if you look back to that first game against the Czech Republic, the team selection that he went with was filled with like loyalty picks in terms of like who had got them there over the qualification campaign. And I just remember thinking, like, screw loyalty. Like, you have got to pick the best team to win this match. Like, don't pick a player because they helped you qualify. You can't favor one player over an entire nation. And, for instance, he didn't pick, let's pick a very clear example of history repeating itself. Billy Gilmore, right? Wasn't selected for the Czech Republic game in the last Euros. Yes, he was young. Yes, he wasn't maybe getting necessary, a lot of game time. But then he went on to be player of the match against England in the second game. He wasn't selected for Germany in this opening game. Uh, and I think for a lot of people, that was absolutely baffling. So it's like, why were those lessons not learned?
I just genuinely don't think he has it. I don't think he has a. I don't even know what I'd describe, but I just keep referring to it as in-game management and decision making. I don't think he understands the impact of what he has to do. I think anything that Steve Clark's tends to have done that's changed being kind of circumstantial and lucky in the way that it's fallen. Because look at the conversation we're having. It's the same thing about the Hungary game. If Kieran Tierney's not fit, you have to think of a different way to play. It was the same in that Czech Republic game. The minute we got wind in the morning of that that Kieran Tierney was injured, every single person was like, we need to play Nathan Patterson and Billy Gilmore because if it's Stephen O'Donnell, we're not going to get attacking down either side. We're not going to get down either side. Czech Republic were kind of rattled a little bit because they were at Hampden. We got a few chances, but by and large, we never really dug off on them properly. And we're 3 years down the line having the exact same conversation about if you don't have Tierney, you need a more attacking right wing back because you need to be able to attack down both sides, which was my issue with James Forrest not playing ahead of Tony Ralston. I understand Tony Ralston's a better defender. However, I've witnessed Jack Hendry more than comfortably defending a back four and deal with channel balls, deal with 1v1s. It's actually something he's way more comfortable in than that back three where it's going, when do I go? Who do I go to? He's happier if it's just a back four where he goes, right, I know where I'm going. So you could have pushed on a James Forrest and you've got the attacking outlet and it probably saves Andy Robertson a little bit. And then teams can't be lopsided against you. They can't go, right, stop Andy Robertson getting forward because that's where the attacks are going. Well, James Forrest has been one of the best wide players in Scottish football for a decade.
Yeah.
James Forrest in those positions that Anthony Ralston get into is going to take somebody on and make something happen as far as I'm concerned. And that's what he showed in the run-in for Celtic and was almost a player that decided the title at times and what he did in the last 6 games.
Yeah, he's reliable. He's safe. You know what you're gonna get kind of from him.
And that's what bugged me. It's just those same lessons when I'm going, if you maybe just made that adjustment and it didn't work, then I think most people would be like, well, we understood it. But I think most people don't understand that Anthony Ralston still played because it was a right back at right wing back that offered us very little going forward. And even when he did the one or two times, he put in a couple of good crosses, but I would look at what James Forrest might have done in those positions, which might have been drive at the person and make something else happen or score himself. And those are not confidence I have in Anthony Ralston or Stephen O'Donnell at the time. I needed something different to give us a different dynamic at this elite level because what we were doing was never going to work and it isn't going to work. And that's a real concern for me.
Mm. Of course, Stephen O'Donnell nearly scored a wonder goal against England at Wembley. Oh my God, how amazing would that have been as well? And I was praying for Ralston as well to be Scotland's saviour. I mean, that would have just been a brilliant, brilliant story.
That was the thing that folks seem to think because you say something, it's only because you've got a real problem. I thought Ralston was terrible in both the first two games, but I thought he was really good in the last game. I just think he was the wrong person to be playing the game. Yeah. And that can happen. People can play perfectly fine and still be the wrong person that played that game. And that was all it was. It's similar to O'Donnell. I thought O'Donnell was brilliant in the England game, good against Croatia, but I still looked at the Czech Republic game and went, Stephen O'Donnell shouldn't have been playing it. Should Nathan Patterson. It's like, yes, things are fine. And this is one of the things I think Scotland fans are a little bit guilty of, similar to our run of results, getting to tournaments. Yeah, it's fine. But the context for me underneath that is this is the best pool of players we've had for 30 years. And fine is no longer good enough because nations that were below us 10 years ago are now above us and are producing better players and are having strikers going for 35 million in the English Premier League. And then just the last point on the loyalty, Albania lost to Italy in the first game, and Armando Broja, who's at Chelsea but on loan at Southampton, is their star player, £35 million signing. They dropped him for the next game because he didn't work hard enough. Tadic was dropped for Serbia because they didn't like his attitude in training. These are key players at nations at the same level as us where managers are going, no, if it's not working, you're not playing. I'm going to make those decisions. Ukraine manager, I know it backfired, but they had two great chances to beat Belgium yesterday at the end. Dropped Mudryk, the £80 million winger, Zinchenko, £40 million left back, dropped them because he didn't think they were good enough. Like managers that are cutthroat and that belong at this level will make those decisions. And I don't think ours is at the level, so doesn't have the power to say Robertson's coming off now. John McGinn's not starting because he looks tired. Scott McDominay's not playing because I don't think he's performing. Callum McGregor's not playing because I don't think he's done it in the Scotland jersey recently. He doesn't do them because he's not coaching. He's below the level of the players he's coaching.
So I think, it's gonna be an interesting time in the next few days and weeks. Obviously, at the time of recording, we don't know what's going to happen with Steve Clarke and his future. Um, the media going into and I tweeted this out, the media going into the tournament was, um, well, how do I describe it? A bit obsessed with Steve Clarke, Sir Steve Clarke, as if he was literally the greatest thing that's ever happened, the greatest coach that's ever lived. And yeah, hero worshipping, I think was the phrase I used. And at the time, I felt it was like, yeah, way overblown because you're kind of asking for trouble if it backfires, and of course it has backfired. And the problem is because so much of the media was embroiled in this kind of hero worshipping, it makes it very difficult for people to kind of backtrack and do a 180 and now call for Steve Clarke to go. I think you're therefore going to find a lot of people, and I've already heard people say that, oh, he should be given another chance. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to stay? Do you think he's going to go? And if he was to go, does he have to be pushed? Does he take the decision himself?
Steve Clarke doesn't go. Steve Clarke's the Scotland manager for the next 2 years. Absolutely. There's no way that's changing. It would be too raw to do it now. It'd be too late to do it in 8 weeks. It's an awkward position. I think the players that we've got and the way we've been playing is now too ingrained that I think there's going to be a massive fall off with whoever takes it next, which is why I think that the next manager needs to be very, very sensibly selected, and it needs to be someone that understands the dynamics of modern football and the requirements of modern football and the modern football player. I do not know that anyone within the SFA actually knows who that person would be and how to identify that person. And that's my concern
Yeah.
is, do you know what you're looking for? Austria knew what they were looking for. When we played Austria 3 times in 6 months and beat them once and drew twice, they got rid of that manager and got Ralph Rangnick. They knew what they needed. They knew what they wanted. They knew what style of football they wanted. And Ralph Rangnick, during his Man United tenure, talked repeatedly about certain things that he wasn't seeing at Man United, about effort, about pressing, about players listening. And then I watched his Austrian side and I went, oh, it was the Man United players that were the problem. He was 100% on the money the whole time, because I watched that Austrian side and I go, they're so well coached. I watched Georgia, who we beat and finished 9 points ahead of group stage. Don't get me wrong, when we played Georgia away, I thought Georgia looked like a good side. I actually didn't think we were bad. I actually looked at them and went, my God, man, they're quite good. They're quite organised. But see, when they actually get possession of the ball, they break really well and spread out the pitch. And what I've seen from them is little tweaks again, dropping into 5-4-1 against certain teams, 5-3-2 and leaving the two up against other teams so they can counter properly, not getting behind the ball too deep. Really, really composed on the ball when they win it back, like not in a rush to get rid of it, not in a rush to go back the way. So I'm watching all of these and I'm going, well, Willie Sagnol played for Bayern Munich. He played at a ridiculously high level, continually played for the France team. I know he wasn't in the Euro squad, but he joined the team at that time. So he will have played at an elite level and seen different coaching and real elite coaching. Steve Clarke's main one is Jose Mourinho, who I wouldn't pay to watch a Jose Mourinho team play football because I think they're absolutely disgusting on the eye. It's not what I like to watch in football. So when people think this is like a Steve Clarke thing I've got, I do not like anti-football. I do not like boring football to the point that one of the best managers ever, I could not watch. And I wouldn't want him to be Scotland manager either because I couldn't watch the football. It's so horrible to watch. And that to me looks like what Steve Clarke's got a lot of his philosophy from, because Steve Clarke played under Vialli and Hullet at Chelsea, who were one of the most attacking, attractive football sides I remember seeing in the early to mid 90s playing football. But I think Jose Mourinho's style of football had a real impact on Steve Clarke because it's very replicated in what I see. It's winners mentality. Not really worried about what it looks like.
Okay. So we'll come on to, okay, right. So you think he's going to stay for a couple of years. I tell you what, at the end of the pod, we'll have a. I want to leave it on a positive note. So we'll have a fun section at the end where we talk about maybe who our ideal kind of Scotland manager might be
Okay.
going forward. So we'll save that bit for the end. But um, yeah, the okay. So his contract runs out in 2 years. Is that why you're saying 2 years? Yeah.
Yes.
Is it possible for him to change his style, do you think, in the 2 years?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. The closest thing we've got to being more attacking or being more exciting is that Ben Doak really progresses and gets over these little injury niggles well, I know one was more serious, but that he gets over that in this 3-5-2, 3-4-3 hybrid becomes a little more like Georgia's team where you have an absolute generational forward talent that can go and make things happen, similar to what we've seen Ben Doak do away at Spain for the under 21s, where it was almost like one guy with ability that could make your whole team go up a level, similar to Gareth Bale for Wales, because their squad, okay, Aaron Ramsey was in it, but their squad wasn't littered with massive talents. They had the talent in the right area, the same way Georgia do. I'm willing to accept that. The same way other teams at these Euros that are performing do. So I think if Ben Doak or Rory Wilson, for example, one of these forward
Ooh.
players came to the front and were like next level, where we don't even see it coming, where they are the level Billy Gilmore is, a level that Aaron Hickey is, a level that Andy Robertson is, but in the key areas that we want to see, because it does feel like we were robbed a little bit, that we get given two world class left backs
Yeah.
at the same time and not a left back and a centre forward or a left back and an attacking midfielder. It just needed to be that extra thing. So if Ben Doak can get back on a pitch and playing regularly for Liverpool and really fit into that team and become the player that we are kind of fingers crossed hoping that he will, that might transform the 3-5-2 to looking really bad to looking really good, just because you have a different player up top.
Yeah.
But I
I'll
don't
tell
think
you.
the style will change.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just praying he starts bringing in some younger players and trusts in, you know, 19, 20, 21-year olds, because every other nation is doing it. Every other nation is not afraid to bring these young guys in and challenge the older players and freshen things up. So we've got we've got to trust in our young players. And yeah, sure, some of them might not make it, and they might fall away. I mean, who knows? But we've got to freshen things up, I think, going forward. I've got real hope for Tommy Conway. I really like what I see of him, and I know he's had his injury problems, but he's quick. He likes balls in behind. He's a good finisher, and I mean, I would love to see some sort of. And again, it might not turn out, well. He might not go on to, he might not continue to improve. I mean, who knows? But something like Conway and Doak up front, in a year or two, could be so exciting. Pace. I mean, that's something we've lacked. Just pace and youth and hunger. I would love if Steve Clarke is here for 2 years, I'd love him just to bring in some fresh faces, because we were one of the oldest squads at the tournament.
Well, that's a big concern for me. The oldest squad at the tournament was one of the big ones, but everyone was talking about when Shankland came on, why not keep Adams on and go two up top? For me, it was why not bring on Shankland and Conway? Why are you not bringing on both of them, both fresh legs? They're very different players, because I keep hearing what Lawrence Shankland can't do and not enough focus on what he can do, which is put the ball in the net. And that's something we didn't do enough and something we don't do enough at Scotland. Get a second striker around him. Like you said, Tommy Conway's really busy. He'll do all that running. He'll run into channels. You can kind of afford to let Lawrence Shankland be where he needs to be, because Lawrence Shankland in that Hungary game ended up putting in a worldie of a cross late on. And I'm like, you're the one I want that cross for. Nobody else. Nobody else in this team.
Why
So,
why why was McTominay on corners, by the way, when he's one of the biggest threats in the box? Just a quick side note.
I'm only guessing, because I don't know. I know Austin McPhee's role at Aston Villa day in, day out. I know exactly what he does. So if they design a set piece at Aston Villa, they'll have 4 or 5 players that practice the corner they've envisaged them doing. And whoever is the best taker of that corner will take the corners. It's not just as simple as the 6'5" guy should be in the box. However, watching our corners, I don't think it was anything difficult that we were asking to be delivered. And the flip side of that is if you have a 6'5" guy that's scoring goals in the air for you, he should not be taking your corners when you've got two 5'10" midfielders sitting on the edge of the box that will not be in the box and aren't sitting back. It's baffling to me that just the aerial threat alone would have caused teams to be in the box with him, caused
Mm.
two people trying to mark him and in his zone. It just felt really bizarre to me.
What
But
what was going on behind? Do you have any inkling as to what was going on between Steve Clarke and Austin in the kind of argument?
I have no idea.
No idea. No.
And that's and again, it's another thing. To be fair though, you'd rather that. I would rather see that, like see that maybe they're arguing about something that's happening on the pitch. But what then annoys fans is you don't really know what it was about. You're like, well, was it something that was right? Was it something that was wrong? Like, and that's where you get a little bit annoyed, and that's where maybe you have to act a bit bigger and not have these disputes in front of a national audience where we can all see and then speculate.
Yeah. Okay, so John, very soon we're going to move on to a fun little section that I've devised, which is a kind of quick fire round on things that things that contributed to our failed Euros. But before we move on to that, is there anything else that you want to? I mean, totally appreciate we could podcast for literally 5 hours on this, but don't want to go on too long. Is there any other major things that you want to kind of chat about?
So staying on the age topic, but into a little more detail, and this is something that I recommended at the very start when we did our first episode together. I know people have had different ideas as to around how you get youth football. So the money the SFA make is astronomical. The SFA are a very, very profitable organisation. The courses that the SFA go on, for me to do my A licence and B licence, and I'm not with an affiliated club, so I pay for it myself out my own pocket. I've paid about £7,200 to get to where I am, and my coaching licenses and different CPD events and different assessments that I've had to do. So I've paid about, I think it's 7,400 I've paid so far to do all of that. To then do, if I was to become a full-time coach or run an academy or take a minimum wage coaching job, would make 10 quid an hour, but you'd have to travel. You're probably breaking about 4 quid an hour. If it's your second job, you're then down to £2 an hour you're getting to do the coaching. So badges are too expensive with SFA. SFA have money. Coaches don't earn enough. All of that leads to people not going into full-time coaching. Therefore, you don't get the best coaches because people can't afford to do it as a full-time job and are not committed to it. So you only get a handful of academies that are running at an elite level with good standard coaches who can only accept X amount of people because the standard has to still be good. You can't have 100 kids at your class, you're not going to develop any good players. That's the starting point. You then find ways to get players into good academies and into good competitive leagues. The break off for us is even if we do all those things right and get players to Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, Motherwell, Aberdeen, to good academies with good coaches, if you can get those coaches well paid, if you can fix all that, there's still then a reliance for this bin nonsense that you can't then put a 16-year-old in the St Mirren first team or a 16-year-old in the Aberdeen first team, which Fletcher Boyd kind of made a fool of at the end of the season by scoring in his 2 games in under 13 minutes. There are talented football players there. The pathway is broken. So I think at the time I'd encouraged by saying maybe some of that money pool that's in the SFA needs to be redistributed to clubs that are willing to play under 21 footballers, under 18 footballers, and under 16 footballers, and pushing them through that way so that we're getting more experience because it doesn't matter what academy you came through. The most important thing is going to be when you start playing men's football at the highest level, you're going to find out who's good and who's not and who can make it. What we actually do is we end up with boys in academy till the age of 22 who have never played a minute of first team football, and you actually don't know if they're any good. Kieran Tierney was Celtic's third choice reserve left back. Nobody knew that Kieran Tierney was going to move into the first team and then reach a level around him that made him grow. That wasn't coaches, by the way. They did a lot of the groundwork, but Kieran Tierney stepping up that level was a lot to do with Kieran Tierney and the coaching that was in the Celtic first team. People don't know that you can tell if somebody's bad, but if somebody's at a good enough level, you need to really test them and let them out there. So money influence, so actually incentivize teams to play the young footballers. And then also what we've seen before, have an actual capped rule that says there need to be X amount of players on that squad all the time. And I don't think you can ever take it further and say there needs to be one in the starting 11. But if we want to progress, it needs to go that way, because I think the minutes per youth player, when I looked at that list that was going around transfer market earlier on, it's not so much that it's like 1.4% for Scotland. It's when you look at the teams that are around us in that list, it's the English Premier League, it's La Liga, it's the Bundesliga, it's Serie A. It's the big leagues with the big money. But if you look at all the leagues that are the same country size as us, with the same types of TV revenue, they're all at the top of that list, playing the most young players from their nation. It's common sense. We do not have any money. Why are we giving contracts to 31-year-old jobbers that have played around Europe instead of having an 18-year-old fill in that space in the squad who can then contribute and potentially grow and make your club money? Seems like such a simplified thing, but I do not believe it doesn't work. I believe that you bred out your own young players, your young coaches, you sell them on to the English Premier League later on, you make a bit of money and you keep doing it.
Yep, 100%. And, these quotas, it's like one of the easiest things that we could do. And it was in the McLeish report, going back, I don't know, what was it, 12 years or so? That was one of the recommendations. So many other nations do it. England do it. And it can be phased in, right? It doesn't have to be like literally this year you have to have 3 under 21 Scottish players in your starting 11, right? You can phase it in, right? Make it easy for clubs to plan and prepare. But the amount of times this journey that I've been on with the podcast, where I've been able to speak to different people, you're talking about our peer leagues who do this. It has become so apparent that these other peer leagues are totally happy just to play their young players. And it's such yeah, I don't know why these countries are prepared to do it and we're not. So just to give a couple of examples, and people can go back and listen to previous episodes if they haven't listened to them already. But there was an episode I did with David Weatherston, who's a Norwegian football expert, and also an episode with Ian Cole, former Celtic coach who now coaches in Croatia. Basically, Norway and Croatia, very similar kind of, populations, similar player pool. These nations are not afraid to put 16-year-olds into their first teams. If you look at Norway, obviously Odegaard and Haaland, they were playing at 16, 17 in their first teams. And then when Hearts were playing Rosenborg in the qualifiers in the season just gone, Rosenborg had a 16-year-old kid playing in centre mid, whose name I forget, but he was man of the match in Norway. And then Croatia, again, they're quite happy to let their 16, 17, 18-year-olds play in their first team. They play for 2 or 3 years in the Croatian top flight, and then they happily sell them on for lots of money to a top 5 league. And that is a recognized pathway. And the big 5 leagues in Europe know to come to Croatia to get the next round of quality young players who have played, between 50 and 100 games in professional men's football. It's such a simple thing, right? Just playing young players. But we're just so risk adverse. Like, they've never played men's football before. And what happens if it goes wrong? We might get relegated. We might finish in the bottom 6. And the manager might get sacked. So let's just play it safe. Let's play the guy who's played League 1, League 2 football in England.
Yeah. And you and I both know that's a nonsense, by the way, because Aberdeen fans, see if Aberdeen fans had 3 Fletcher Boyds playing in their team and they were going through the similar spell, by the way, they went through under Barry Robson, under Jim Goodwin, with these experienced managers playing these experienced players who were leading them to shit results continually, shit performances. Every single person knows that if you put 3 or 4 academy players in your team, fans do actually relax for a bit and give those boys a little bit of time, because fans will argue amongst themselves. Give him a bit of time, he's a young lad. Like, you start to buy in, and every single fan wants to see their academy players come in, because there's an affinity to them that you feel that they're a fan of the team as well, and most of them normally are. You want that in your team. You do not want looking at somebody who's played in the English Championship for 10 years coming up to Rangers, and he's getting 25 grand a week, and you're going, if he plays terribly, I'm going to go through him. Like, there's no way I'm thinking about what he feels like or what he's behaving like. He's costing us a fortune and have no affinity to him. Like there's nothing in that for me. But if you tell me Bailey Rice is playing, I'm going to be much more patient watching Bailey Rice and more positive with what I see. Same with Ross McCausland, same with Alex Lowry if he comes through, same with Leon King. I'm going to be much more positive and much more understanding that there's a process for these guys. Because I remember Alan Hutton making his Rangers debut and he was absolutely rotten for Rangers away at Partick Thistle. Absolutely rotten. But see, over a couple of games, you could start to see that he had something very quickly. You could be like, wow. And then see when those little something started to happen on the pitch, you then went, oh my God, he's going to actually go to the English Premier League in a year, by the way, because he's top level. Same way Alan McGregor made a couple of mistakes in his first few Rangers games when he was under Paul Le Guen. But then over a year, he was unbelievable. And it's no rocket science. These players are not going to come in your team and be perfect. But if you've trained them well in the 10 years you've had them at academy football, they should be ready to play at 17, 18.
Yep. Good. Okay, right. Let's do the quick fire round. Let's mix things up. Okay, so basically, so a bit of context to this, I put a shout out on Twitter basically saying uh what is the reasons behind Scotland's crap Euros? And we got a whole bunch of responses, and I've tried to like collate them all into this document. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna read them out, and all I want you to say is yes or no, instinctively, as to whether you agree that these things directly contributed to our failed Euros.
Okay.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, right. So we'll start out with a nice, easy one. Steve Clarke and his tactics.
Yes.
Being predictable.
Yes.
Lack of subs.
Yes.
Injuries.
Oh, yes.
Argentine refereeing.
No.
That was a no for the refereeing. Yeah, yeah. By the way, just quick side note: Steve Clarke seriously let him down. That
Oh,
he actually went down quite a bit in my estimations
mate.
for his comments. That actually was so disappointing.
Yep.
Right. Lack of tactical adjustments in game.
Yes.
Team selections such as Gilmour and Forrest.
Yep.
Lack of faith in young players.
Yes.
Obsession trying to fit Tierney and Rob Owen.
Yes.
Lack of a good striker.
No.
No one brave enough to take a player on.
No.
Lack of width.
Yes.
Lack of pace.
Yes.
Loyalty.
Yes.
Poor mentality and mindset.
Yes.
Over celebrating the fact that we just got there in the first place.
Yes. 100%.
And not learning from the last Euros.
Yes.
Okay. So those were things that were quite directly related to the Euros. There's also a whole bunch of wider issues that have obviously contributed, because it's not just down to Steve Clarke and his tactics, you know, and things. There's, as we know, I mean, there's a whole bloody podcast on it. There are so many wider issues at play that have all kind of, in one way or another, kind of contributed to kind of what we've seen unfold. So let's take a look. So same thing, yes or no to this is the bigger picture stuff. So a lack of Scots playing in the Scottish top flight.
No.
A lack of pathways for young Scottish players.
Yes.
The size of our league.
Yes.
Underinvestment and support for grassroots football.
Yes.
Access to good playing facilities.
Yes.
The people who are in charge of Scottish football not sorting out youth development.
Yes.
The Scottish old school mindset.
Yes.
And kind of related to that, yes, the Scottish mindset, the things that Souness and Moyes talked about in the studios.
Do you want me to rant about that, or do we just say yes
Yeah,
or
go
no?
on. Yeah, go on. Let's do a quick mini rant on that.
So I said this about Graham. Graham Souness doesn't understand Scottish football and doesn't know anything about Scottish football. He's been paid for 30 years to know about English football, and that's his job. His job is to be a full-time pundit and knowledgeable of the English football match. Graham Souness, because he's Scottish and played for Scotland and managed Rangers and that, etc., he's not knowledgeable in Scottish football. David Moyes has also been outside of Scottish football for most of the last 30 years. These are two people that do not know the ins and outs. They've got less knowledge than you and I of what's going on in Scottish football right now because we watch it and absorb it every single day. They watch other leagues and are paid to work and be in other leagues and absorb that constantly 24/7. So they don't have a clue what the dynamics of Scottish football are and what the requirements within Scottish football are. They're as clued up as the people that are leading the country in the Scottish football pyramid. They do not have a clue what it is they have to do. And that's why they say generic terms like a country our size, etc. No, absolute nonsense. It's like they've got a bowl of fruit and they've got the you know what I mean? It's bingo. What excuse are we going to pull out? Players aren't big enough. People like Billy Gilmore are not tall enough. Like all these stupid generic comments, man. Graham Souness is not a Scottish football expert. Graham Souness is a football expert that was once a Scottish footballer. That's it.
I'm here for that run. Okay, next one. Compliant media not challenging the status quo.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that with a few of the decisions whereby, again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I'll be quick. Ralston. Every single pundit before the Switzerland game didn't have Anthony Ralston in their squad. Nobody, not a single person had put Ralston. It was all Forrester McCrory, every single one, and then every single one had him in for the following game, as if something had changed after a terrible performance. And that's a pure Scottish mentality thing of, oh, he reacted well, made the mistake, like he caused the error.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, lack of footballing identity in Scotland.
Overall, yes,
General anti-football tactics in Scotland.
yes,
And this is the final one, a lack of vision or strategy for the future by those in charge.
yes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That brings an end to our quickfire round. I feel like we've gone on, have I got news for you or something? I mean, there's so many of these issues. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff, obviously, that we all know need sorted in Scottish football. And if you are coming fresh to this podcast for the first time, please dig back into the catalogue. There's a there's a lot to go through, but I guess my overall feeling on it is that there are some things that are hard to change, and things that will take years, things that will take decades. But there are absolutely some easy wins and some things, as we just touched on about quotas and bringing young players through. These are relatively simple things that we can bring in to into Scottish football and actually try and address ultimately the performance of the national team and the quality of the players that we're kind of bringing through. Okay, let's bring it to a kind of positive ending then, John. We might be talking a couple of years down the line. Who, in theory, in your wildest dreams, would you like to be our new head coach? And I'm going to take a wild guess that it's not going to be David Moyes.
I mean, if you want Steve Clarke with ginger hair, it's David Moyes. If you want Steve Clarke light, it's David Moyes. No, none of those people are even remotely appealing to me, and that's just a nonsense argument. It's not going to happen. It's the least thing I'm interested in. It's just like for like. It's not having a strategy. It's not knowing, and this is where my issue is going to become. We need something different. We need somebody with an idea and an identity that understands. One of the biggest things I hear about international football, and I hear the English media parading it around for Gareth Southgate, is it's really hard in the short space of time to implement a style of play and a structure and patterns of play. I watched Ange Postecoglou take the Tottenham job and within 6 days played Barcelona in a friendly, and they were playing exactly like Celtic had the previous 2 seasons. I mean, I could tell what Tottenham were doing position for position in every attacking phase, and he had 6 training sessions. Steve Clarke got more than that building up to the Euros, and he's had more than that in the last 4 years. So the idea that people can't work and do things in a short space of time is absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. So for me, everyone knows who in an ideal world that if I could avoid repercussion and I could appoint somebody with an idea behind it, it would be the man who's currently Airdrie manager, as far as I'm concerned. It's the only person inside Scottish football in the top four divisions that I'm aware of and watch regularly that I think's got an understanding of modern football and where football is going and what the requirements of day-to-day footballers are and how you coach, not manage, how you coach a team to play the way you want them to by actually being on the training ground and dictating it day to day and demanding it, doing his own analysis. And within that, what I would have loved to have seen was somebody like a John Collins, the technical director, Ian Cathro being brought in as an assistant to Ian Cathro, Austin McPhee staying in an assistant or a head coach's role within that squad and having like a dream team of people that I believe are of a different mindset because I am done with the old era and the old ways of watching these teams and go, what is it that I'm not getting? Because there's only so many times people can tell me that I don't understand football because I never played football or I don't get it because I'm not in it. I don't believe that anymore because I went up and watched the Airdrie train. I've spent time talking to Reece McCabe and the ins and out of what they do. It's actually very simple what they're doing. It's just they're doing it well. And that's what alarms me. And anytime I hear how good Pep Guardiola was with the Barcelona B team, it was because it was simple and understanding and everyone knew what they were doing. But I've still got Scottish football telling me that it's not that simple. And I'm like, it seems like people better than you are telling me it's pretty simple. So if I was to go and this is like I know it's not the same level, right? But this is like to me, this is my Julian Nagelsmann of Scottish football. When I look at Reece McCabe, I think he's so far ahead of himself and so far ahead of the other people that they actually hate it, and that's why they try and dismiss, or you'll see them have little
Mm.
comments about Reece McCabe when he maybe fails in the playoffs or doesn't quite get there, or when he inevitably does fail at Airdrie or fails in a job, you'll hear it's the same with Ian Cathro when he failed.
With one of the lowest budgets in the championship. Let's
I think
let's
it might be
give
the I think it might be the lowest. I think Airdrie were the lowest last year. Same with Ian Cathro when he failed. Everyone wants to talk about Ian Cathro as if he died after the Hearts job and didn't go on to manage in the be a first team coach and the main coach, sorry, in the Premier League for 4 seasons after that with Wolves. Like people are acting like Ian Cathro was at Hearts and then is out of work. Ian Cathro's currently out of work by choice. But people reveled in that because they wanted to tell you that these people were wrong and not that they just couldn't have a bad experience. Same as Sean Maloney. Sean Maloney's, if he never had the Hibs experience, maybe he's somebody that I would also put in that bracket of I think they're a little bit different to what this country has and they understand where modern football's going and we just need people to just grab it by the horns and take it themselves and go, "Do you know what? No, we're changing it because there's nobody telling me that what I watch Airdrie do like you said, with the budget and age, by the way, age of the players they're using, one of the youngest squads in the league. What I see as football and what I see being played and coached, there's nobody telling me that if you give Reece McCabe, Billy Gilmore, Callum McGregor, Ryan Christie, McTominay, McGinn, Jay Adams, Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney, and Aaron Hickey, you wouldn't see a good football inside. I would be absolutely astonished if it wasn't amazing to watch.
Oh, there you go. Well, you're probably the first person to tout Reece McCabe for the Scotland job. But I mean, I agree. I mean, ever since you kind of first mentioned him, he's been on my radar, and I've watched some of his stuff, and it really is. It's just nice to see a kind of fresh approach. Um, a club doing something completely different within the SPFL. I mean, all those other coaches that you cite is it really is a damning indictment to how we treat coaches and managers who try and do anything different within Scotland. I mean, I remember the Ian Cathro thing. The pundits were bullying him senseless. It was, I mean, embarrassing. I mean, Chris Boyd, I think, was the worst at it, but like just picking on him for using an iPad.
Honestly, mate, and look at every single stadium at elite football now. Every single stadium at elite football at elite level has an iPad and TV screen in their dugout so they can do adjustments as they go.
Yeah.
And again, we'll get on. I won't get into a rant, but John Collins. I remember a John Collins interview on Graham Hunter's podcast, And he talked about his biggest bugbear with Scottish football was hearing coaches at senior clubs say they couldn't play a 19-year-old footballer because he never had a left foot.
Mm.
And they're like, the boy's been at your academy for 10 years. What do you mean he's not got a left foot? That's your problem. That's your fault. As if it wasn't, as if they were agnostic to the problem.
Mm.
You as a head coach and you as a senior, your whole club should be aligned as to what you need people to have as a technical ability so that it doesn't get to 19 years old, try to break into Celtic's first team and go, boy's not got a good enough left foot. You go, who was fixing that? Like,
Yeah.
oh, did you just play him? Did you just play him right centre half the whole time? Did you just play him left wing, cutting in his right foot the whole time? Nobody thought about what they had to do. They just got on with it. It's that the people, and that's what I loved about going and watching Airdrie Reece McCabe was they were working with people and individual programs at a level where people tell me you can't do stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. The Sean Maloney is an interesting one. I mean, Hibs just didn't give him a chance. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see how how his career pans out. But the amount of criticism that people in the media and pundits, etc., are willing to lay on coaches and managers who they don't know, who haven't played the game, who aren't mates with. It's truly astonishing. And obviously you saw it as well, quite famous obviously with Postecoglou as well, when he came in, We are so far behind the times in that. And one of the big phenomenons we've witnessed with football around the world in recent years is the rise of the career coach, and that's something we just haven't remotely embraced in Scotland. Someone who literally has just learnt the craft of coaching and hasn't played the game to a top level. And I would like to see us generally as a nation and some of the clubs actually start to embrace career coaches as well, rather than just going for someone who's an ex-pro, who knows what it takes, who knows the club. Go out and actually find someone who actually knows how to coach the players in the right way. And so for me, for the next Scotland manager, I'm not even fussed if it's a Scottish manager. I don't care whether they've played the game to a high level or to an amateur level, or they've only played 5-a-sides. Doesn't make a difference to me. Are these the best? Is this the best person to get the best out of the players that we've got at our disposal and are going to get us playing in a style of football that we can all be proud of? That's what's important to me. And we need, as a nation, a call to all pundits and journalists watching is like, let's just open our mindset a little bit and embrace some different perspectives. Yeah.
I agree with that because do you know what the biggest issue is? Is see when people see you've not played the game, I think they think you've got two left feet and couldn't possibly take part in a session or couldn't coach a session or couldn't teach you anything. And it's not the fact that you just never played football at any level because you didn't, because you did other things. You chose to go to football and watch football instead of doing it. Pep Linders said that. Said that up until he was 19, 20, he liked going and watching football with his friends and then got into coaching. But he always played football, just never went professional or semi-professional because he wanted to go to football instead. And Pep Linders has done okay for himself, and he never played the football at any level at all. Played with his mates, and I know that's like a one example, right? It's anecdotal, but those are going to pop up more and more very quickly. And we are not even Britain, by the way. It's Scotland. We're one of the only people behind with that mentality because even England are switching very quickly down the national leagues. It's 28 to 35-year-old coaches who are bringing in analysts, are bringing in set piece people that they understand that it's going. I know they've got more money down there, but they understand where football's going, and we're getting very close to as far behind as we already are, falling even further behind.
Yep. Yep. 100%. Oh my word. Right. So that was quite a good rant, I think. I feel better. Do I? Do I, or do I feel more depressed? I can't quite work it out. The positive news is that there is lots of room for improvement. There's lots of things that we can do, but my word, we just need to embrace, these new ideas and stop being so stuck in the mud, because otherwise we are going to have David Moyes as our next head coach. And you know what? If it is David Moyes, I'm going to be fully behind him. Don't get me wrong. You know, I love the Scottish national team. I've followed us. I've watched pretty much every minute of every Scotland game for 30 years. You know, I've watched us in the dire Bertie Votes days. And by the way, that's like a huge thing as well, in that has taken us decades to get over. The fact that we did have one foreign coach and it didn't go well.
I kind of liked the Betty Vokes era a little bit. Like I thought we were like proper underdogs at the time. I thought that team, some of the players that came through at the end of that, I loved that team. Like, I'm the
Really?
same as you. I'm the same as you, mate.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with Scotland. I don't understand what this. I don't understand people that don't like watching the national side. It doesn't make any sense to me. I love going to Scotland games. I'm absolutely gutted I couldn't go to the Euros and make myself riddled with debt. But I'm like, I love watching Scotland, and I think that's why sometimes when you're trying to converse in 280 characters, your opinions can kind of get a little bit skewed as how negative you are. I love watching Scotland. I absolutely love international football, and it annoys me and pains me when it goes badly.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Oh, well, okay. Right. Final question then, John. Are we going to qualify for the next World Cup?
No.
Oh, man. That was your cue to say yes.
Nah.
Absolutely. There's no question about it.
Nah, I don't think so.
Oh, God. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say we are going to qualify for the World Cup. And not only are we going to qualify, we're going to beat England in the group stages and knock them out. How about that? I feel like I've got to somehow kind of think of a positive note to finish the podcast on. Well done to everyone who's got to this stage of the podcast. It's a little bit longer than we would usually do, but you know, it's difficult to make it much shorter than what it is. And like I say, we could have gone easily on for another hour. So, okay, big thank you to all of you listening, and thank you, John, and we'll catch you again soon. This podcast was produced by Edinburgh Documentary Films, which is a film and media company co-founded by me, Kieran Hennigan. So we make documentaries for TV and cinema, but we also work with companies and brands to help them tell their stories in impactful and meaningful ways. You can find out more at edinburghdocs.co.uk, and please contact me directly if you'd like to talk about any potential projects.